Etruscan temples will give us a model for what will be a Roman temple, obviously with Greek elements added to it because that's what the Romans do. But here we see a model. Now, there aren't really surviving Etruscan temples. Shockingly, once again, the Romans are building over the same places. They're going to replace Etruscan temples with their own. It makes sense, even though they're worshiping probably more or less the same gods. And this one is reconstructed based on writings by Vitruvius in the 1st century. There appear to be several variations of this very basic type, but we're going to deal with the very basic here because we don't know everything that we want to about the variations. The basic design can be accredited in part to Greek temple construction, the use of a colonnade, at least in front of the temple, rather than all the way around. We see the use of 3 cellas and 3 entrances, and the whole thing is put up on this podium, this concrete podium or stone podium that would elevate it above the rest of the ground, acting also as a foundation. And this was an ornate home for Etruscan gods with a distinct front of the building, very different from the Greek model. But this may have to do with the resources that they have. Much of the material doesn't survive because we see, for example, the use of sun-dried brick and wooden columns. So oftentimes these are different materials, but these are the materials that were available to the Etruscans. Yes, there's marble on their land, but they're not using it to the same degree that the Greeks are. Marble, of course, taking a lot more effort to remove from the land than, for example, developing mud brick. And these are always put up on a stone podium. So oftentimes we just have the stone podium remaining from these temples, which is part of what causes an issue. They did use unfluted wooden columns, sometimes called Tuscan columns. This is a simpler form of column than the Doric. It's really primarily pragmatic. So they're not going to create a lot of big Ionic and Corinthian columns. The Etruscans tend to have a certain pragmatism to them in their architecture as well as the rest of their art. The ceiling or the roof tiles tend to be terracotta with a wooden support underneath rather than stone, which is what we see from the Greeks. The walls are sun-dried brick. The overall design shows us wide-spaced columns on a deep porch. Well, that wide spacing makes sense because it's a narrower building. It's smaller than the Greek temples, but also it's a big porch. And so you're not supporting as much weight as you would going all the way around the structure with the typical peristyle that we see from the Greeks. We also see 3 cellas, typically 1 for each of the main gods: Tinia, Unia, and Minerva. Minerva becoming effectively Athena, for example. And we do see statuary, although not in the pediment. They don't really decorate the pediment, as you can see. Rather, we see life-size terracotta statues typically put up on the roof.